Yes, I know.
All right, thank you for joining us tonight for the August 9th village board meeting. If you could join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wait, roll call attendance, please.
Trustee Lizikis.
Here.
Trustee Porter.
Here.
Trustee Kimmelhurt. Here. Trustee Rosati.
Here.
Trustee Cameron. Here. Trustee Shear.
Here.
Mayor Mercurio.
Present.
7 present, 0 absent.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the village board meeting for July 19th, 2021? Moved by Paul, second. Second by Kristen. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Can I get a motion to approve the payment of abstract for 8/2/2021 for voucher numbers 61192 to 61225 for a total of $114,946.94.
So moved.
By Paul, second. Second by Marcia. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. All right, speakers and communications, we're going to start with Will Miller's presentation for a proposed Eagle Scout project. Will, you want to tell us what it's about?
All right. Good evening. I'm with 513, and what I looked at.
Using the microphone?
Microphone's on here.
Very good.
What I'd like
Speak up so we can hear you.
what I'd like to do for the village is when I would build and donate about 4 or 5 wheelchair accessible picnic benches to be placed down at Hamlet. I would raise the money, and I would have some other scouts help me build them, and it would be done in about a couple of months. And I would, wherever the village would like to put the tables at wheelchair accessible areas, that I would think would be the best areas to be placed. And if anyone would like to see a more in-depth way of
Be careful, don't trip.
how these will be built, there you can look at that. And that has more in-depth, that has dimensions and cuts of wood.
There are 3 to 4 wheelchair accessible picnic tables. And you'll build them, you'll come up with the money for them.
Yes.
And then you're going to work with maybe the Friends of Hamlin Park group to come up with some locations, maybe and where to play.
Yeah, I can reach out to them.
I love it. Sounds great. Are they going to be painted or stained or?
Yeah, I can say them.
I think it'll just take a couple months.
Yeah, I just got to get it.
So you need to take it to the scout leaders in the troop. They approve it, then you take it to the council. Okay.
And then after that, I'll just have to raise the money. And then just buy the wood and have it built.
I love it. One thing. Great.
Yep, great project.
I'll donate.
A lot of people who want to help support you. It's a great concept and very thoughtful. And I think thanks for coming up. Let us know what else you need. Matt Hay, the DPW chief, just reach out to the village and put in touch with him too. If he has given questions for him, he'll be able to find. All right. Thanks. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
All right, this is the first speakers and communications portion. If you'd like to speak on an issue, please raise your hand. When acknowledged, please you can come to the front, state your name and address clearly, and let us know what your issue is. And you'll have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Anybody want to speak at the first figures of communication? All right, moving on to the first public hearing. Can I get a motion to open the first public hearing for local law number 4 for the proposed changes to the Village Code Chapter 156 Historic Preservation at 7:05 p.m. Moved by Ernie. No. Second by Paul. Oh, sorry. Moved by Tony. Second by Paul. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. The public hearing is open. Would anybody from HBC like to give us a quick overview?
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Colby, and I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission here in East Aurora. We have been working for the last couple of years on updating our historic preservation law to bring it in line with the New York State Model Preservation Law. There's a couple of reasons for doing this. One is to bring it in line. Our law was written in 1987. There have been changes in the field since then. We're bringing it in line to best practices now. Another reason is that we are very fortunate here in East Aurora to have a very beautiful built environment, and we want to encourage people to appreciate it and to make it easier for homeowners and for businesses to preserve their property, and we're clarifying some of the things through this law. A third reason for doing this is to tighten up some of the things in the law that have allowed some things to occur in our village that we would rather not see happen. And so we're amending the law, not amending, we're changing the law to tighten up some of the problems with it. Basically, the areas that are covered, we are probably the biggest thing is that what we are doing is we are making it clearer to understand the process of when a property owner is in violation and the process of being able to remedy something that is in violation of historic preservation standards. That probably is the biggest part of this process. And I'd be happy to take any questions that folks may have. Well, that's easy. I want to let you folks know over with COVID, information is sort of hard to get out to people. But in the last couple of years, we have had St. Matthias become a National Historic Landmark. We have had the bank building on Main Street is being voted on in Washington in September to be designated as a National Historic Landmark. And that particular building actually received significant tax credits by going through the historic preservation standards. We have also had, within the last couple of years, St. Matthias also is a local landmark, as is the Masonic Lodge on Main Street, also as a local landmark. So we are working here. You are welcome to come to our meetings, learn about historic preservation, and bring up any concerns you may have. Anything the board may have to say.
You're bringing it from 9 members down to 7.
We're bringing
At
it.
least 7, right? Those are no cap.
You know how easy it is to find lots and lots of people to serve on committees. 7 is a number we feel we can do and work with and always get forward for. That's a very good number to work with. The other thing is, like, you may be wondering, how do people get on the Historic Preservation Commission? There is, this is not just something that is local. We are called a certified local government. That means that the state of New York has looked at us and certified our law. Then the state of New York, that is their historic preservation office, is guided by the National Park Service under the Department of the Interior. So when we are appointing people to the commission, we are looking for people who are historians. We are looking for people who are architects. We are looking for people who are local people who are interested in historic preservation and maybe live in an old house. But there are standards and there are guidances that we are given from Washington and historic preservation in terms of local guidance and local boards. This dates from 1966. So this is something that has been in place for a long time, and it continues to evolve as new materials come on the market and as more people become involved also. All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Would anyone from the public like to comment on the HPC public hearing before we close it up? All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing at 7:11 p.m.? Moved by Marcia, second. Second by Kristen. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing A is closed. Public hearing 3B, can I get a motion to open this public hearing for the special use permit for 54 Elm Street for Les Coast Taco at 7:11 p.m.? Moved by Paul, second. Second by Ernie. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is open. Would the applicant like to say anything before we move to general public comment? Anyone from the public have any comments on this issue? The board have any questions for the applicant while they're here? All right. And I get a motion to close the public hearing at 7:12 p.m. Moved by Steve, second. Second by Marcia. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is closed. 3C, can I get a motion to open the public hearing for special use permit for 391 Olean Road for Wojo Ninja Warrior Gym facility at 7:12 p.m. Moved by Kristen, second. Second by Paul. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is open. Is the applicant for Wojo Ninja Warrior Gym here? Would they like to say anything?
No, this is question.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this application? From the board like to ask the applicant any questions? All the public hearings open.
Yeah, wait, Wojo.
With abbreviated last name.
Barney Miller? Yeah, just be bold enough for everybody.
No preference.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing at 7:13 p.m.? Moved by Marcia, second. Second by Tony. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing C is closed. 3D, can I get a motion to open public hearing for the application to keep real factors at 850? I wrote over 0 or not? 859 Oakwood Avenue by Amy and Michael Gates at 7:13 p.m. Moved by Marcia, second. Second by Paul. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is open. Is the applicant here and would they like to say anything about the project?
Yeah, I guess, if anyone has questions about it, we're here.
Would anyone from the public like to make any comment regarding this? Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Kathy Rozier. I live on Blake Hill, 137 Blake Hill.
Would you mind stepping forward?
Because of the barrier.
Is it because I'm short?
So am I.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That doesn't work. You can just talk.
It's off.
Oh. So,
You want to talk right at the board.
oh, I thought I was talking to the applicant.
You said Kathy Rogan from Lake.
Rozier.
Rogan.
Yeah, Blake Hill. So I've looked up a lot of information about alpacas. I have nothing against them. But my questions are, regarding what I've read. Evidently alpacas get along with all sorts of animals, farmyard animals and other animals, with the exception of the canine family. Evidently, they don't care for dogs. I imagine there are exceptions, but that's what I read. And I know the applicants have dogs right next door at, I believe, Jacob's property. They have what I call the lunger. Because when I walk by with any one of my granddogs, he lunges and throws himself against the gate, and that fence goes up along their property. There's a Labrador that lives right behind them. There's another dog that lives right next door, because when I walk around the neighborhood, I like dogs, I see dogs. Did I mention they have 2 dogs? So that's one thing. Alpacas aren't that noisy because they hum. I won't go into the humming. I've been doing it for my husband and he wants me to stop. But they hum unless they're frightened, like let's say by a dog or something, then they shriek. So it's a little noise that they make, like on the video, it showed that. So that's really I know about them. I just was wondering, because I don't know how much property these people have for the alpacas to be there. I guess they can even be housebroken, so maybe that's their plan. I don't know. But it was just, I didn't know what their plan was for them and if they knew the thing about the humming, the shrieking, the dogs that they don't care for. Other than that, I guess nothing.
Who else? From back row?
My name is Timothy Culhane. My parents live in Detroit, 43 Oakwood. I live in Cheektowaga. And I'm just here to kind of help them voice their concerns and views, about the alpacas coming so close to their property. I want to thank the East Aurora Village Board. Your website's great. Finding the agenda was super easy. Printing up everything up for the town meeting, it was great too. So I appreciate that. Whoever helped me on the phone, thank you very much. The Gates family, I want to say thank you for sending out a letter to my parents and notifying them about the changes, the proposed laws, and codes within East Aurora Village. And thank you for that, letting them know. Even though I live in Cheektowaga, I graduated from East Aurora High School in 1997. I consider East Aurora my home. I work in East Aurora. I participate in the farmers market almost every Saturday. The vendors there have seen my kids growing up from stroller up now to teenager. My parents recently took my kids to the toy loft, and they couldn't believe how much they grow. That's how much, even though I live in Cheektowaga, I participate here in East Aurora. My parents like their property how they are. They're very concerned about the changes that the Gates family are proposing. I'm sure the alpacas are nice, and they're cute, and they're trainable. But the reality is they're not suited for residential property. They're not suited for village life here in East Aurora. They're not suited for property that's about half a mile away from village life. They're suited for more of a farmland. And the board recently, in 2019, ruled against a permit for goats allowed in the village. It was in Easter advertising. And my parents have the same concern as the other residents of East Aurora had when the permit was requested for goats. They pay very high taxes to live in the village. They like the village life. They like having residential property. They don't want it to be a farmland. Residents during this board meeting allowed permits for goats. They didn't want, they were worried about pests, bats, mice, snakes coming onto their property due to the waste and due to the hay and due to the food. People during that meeting firmly believed the overall quality of life and property values would suffer due to having farming within residential property. Those are my parents' concerns. My parents are also worried about the waste, potential smells and noises the other woman brought up recently that alpacas made. 2019 Same thing happened in the outskirts of San Diego. Couples and families dream was to have alpacas on residential property. Over a period of time, the noise that alpacas made started making phone calls to their town board about the noise concerns. And I know I saw some people shaking their head, but the reality is, when alpacas do get scared, they make a high-pitched scream. Is this the sound we want in the village of East Aurora? Walking a scared alpaca that potentially sounds like a child screaming? There's a great website, a great alpaca bottom pastures in Rutland, Massachusetts. They have a great blog and they tell stories about having an alpaca farm and how great they are, how trainable they are, and how wonderful they are. But this blog caught my attention. Wake up call at 3 a.m. What happened was their herd of alpacas got scared. They started screaming at 3 a.m. Their daughter ran into their room. And of course they got up and they were concerned. They found flashlights, they got their boots, they ran down their field, they turned the flashlights on. They didn't find a coyote, they didn't find a predator. What they found was a rabbit. And that's the punchline. It's supposed to be a funny story about alpacas. But the reality is at 3 a.m. in the morning, an alpaca gets frightened. I don't think my parents want to hear that screaming in their backyard. I don't think they want to have that in the village of East Aurora. Flooding. We moved up to East Aurora in the early 1990s. And the way the geography is, when the Learys live there, and now when the Learys live there, my parents live down below, there's a hill. Water, especially this summer like this, would rush down into my parents' backyard and also in the basement. They invested tens of thousands of dollars in drainage to help them solve this problem. What they're worried about the most is where the shed/barn is going to be for the alpacas and where it's going to be positioned in their yard. When rainwater comes, what's going to happen to the manure? Is that manure going to be washed into my parents' backyard? According to Alpaca Magazine, Alpaca Waste Management, they produce over 1,500 pounds each alpaca of manure a year. Times that by 3. How much manure is going to come into my parents' backyard if it's not done successfully? In the Gates letter, they talk about their herbivores. They like eating grass. They like eating bark, stems of trees. If you look at the map that Gates presented, my parents' property line is the perfect alpaca hangout. It's wooded. It has trees. It has leaves. It has barks. Are the alpacas going to be allowed to get that close to my parents' property to hang out there? And if they do, what are they going to do about the waste? Is the waste and the manure going to be washed down in my parents' yard? And potentially they're worried about the smell. I know online they say they don't smell, but when you have hay, you have waste like poop and urine, potentially it's going to smell. My parents are sitting in their backyard. Is their backyard going to smell like a barn? Are they going to be able to participate like we've had for many summers, hanging out in their pool, having barbecues, not having to worry about their backyard and or their house if the windows are open, smelling like a barn? Now, this is nothing personal, just concerns that my parents have, and they don't feel comfortable speaking in front of people. So I'm taking this opportunity to help my parents out and lay out what their concerns are. I know that potentially there's a petition going around. And unfortunately, my parents were never talked to about this. They were never invited up. A phone call was never made that I'm aware of from the Beats family. Say, Tim and Jean, why don't you come up and see what our plans are? Why don't you participate too? We can address your concerns. I think if they would have done that, it probably would have been a whole lot easier. But my parents in their 70s, they're looking to retire. They love living in East Aurora. They love having the village life. And just like in 2019, when there was a proposal for goats in the village, the residents didn't want it for the same reasons my parents wanted. I'd like to propose that to the board. I want to thank you for the time and letting me participate in that.
Steve Patterson, the board knows me, probably most of the town
Your
knows
address?
that we were the first,
Address, I need the address for the record.
127 Buffalo Road.
Thank you.
We were the first people in the village to have alpacas. I think most people know it's Marshmallow and Coco. They ran for president, didn't win, but they're going to run for governor next year. That being said, I want to kind of put the town at ease from our experience. We brought one of our neighbors who had approval or disapproval of our animals, and I have a testimonial from another neighbor, okay? One, they don't make any noise. You don't even know they're around unless you see them. We have two of them. They're in 2/3 of an acre fenced in. Two, we have a neighbor's dog comes over and they sniff each other every day. You're not afraid of animals unless the dog attacks them. In fact, if you look at alpacas, at most of the farms, they'll have a German shepherd that protects them from coyotes. Or you have a llama that protects coyotes. Okay, but there is no noise out of them. They also love people, as the town knows. People come to our house all the time with children. They love children, they love people, they love anyone with handicap. Okay, they sense that illness. And they are actually the second most domesticated animal in the world. Okay, and as far as their poop, they are trained immediately when you take one home to go in one spot only. You are given a bag of poop, and you put it in one spot, and they will never go anywhere else. So it's controlled. You can bag it up every day, and if you let it dry, within a week, it turns to a white powder. There's no smell at all. So I know as we live on the other side of the village, we really don't have any say in whether the approval is on the other side of the village. But the town, I don't see any problem. We walk our animals downtown on Sundays. People love them. They don't poop or pee in the streets. They love people. They don't get scared of people. I would have no problem having 3 more in the village. But we want to get another one that you have approval for. So I would have no question.
So I got a question. Please.
Yeah.
Do they urinate in the same place that they
All the time.
are trained to go?
Bingo.
Is it on the hay?
No, you can put it on the ground. What we did is we had a spot outside with a drain, put a French drain in, the stone. And on the inside of the barn, we put a French drain under the floor into a ground. So their urine goes into the ground and we wash it weekly. Their poop, you just shovel it up, put it in bags. A lot of farmers like to buy it for fertilizer. It's the cleanest, purest fertilizer in the world. If it dries up, they use it for fertilizer. So no, there's no issue with that.
I have one question. How far were you from the village?
We're in the village.
You're on Mount Aurora.
We're in right in the
You're
village.
not like a half mile, less than a half mile away from. So,
We're 7 houses. We are in the village. You know, we can walk to like Barville in 1 minute. We walk to Barville all the time. And yeah, and our neighbors will tell you, one of them's here. Okay, Lisa would probably like to say something.
My name is Lisa Bass, 134 Buffalo Road, and I live right across the street from Stephen. For 2 years, they've had
Almost good.
almost 3. They've had the alpacas. They're great. I never hear noise. I hardly even know they're there. I never hear them. They don't attract any wild animals. I'm right in the village. I know my lawn and gardener. I've got moles and snakes just because it's a garden, right? So we've got, I don't know, nothing but wonderful things to say about alpacas. I've taken my grandchildren over there. They're sweet to them. They're just wonderful animals. And I never knew they made a noise at all. So, yeah, I think they're going to be the gates that have great help.
I'm just wondering about, work comes to the food. I'm wondering
I'm
about
sorry.
flies,
Wait.
Question for her?
or for whoever can answer the question.
Just step up, give us your name and address, please. Thank you.
I'm Laura Mel. I live on Blake Hill, when you Blake Hill Road. I just had questions because I don't know the answers to this.
Excuse me,
what
just so you
about
know,
flies that
excuse
might
me,
come-
you just address the board.
What about
Thank you.
flies that may come to the area because of the smell of the animals, or animals just tend to draw in flies? What about their food and whether they're, if it's not kept contained, is it possible that it could bring in rodents to collect the food? What about the bedding and bringing in the bedding for the size of the barn that they're going to have, and keeping the animals or keeping the llama or the alpacas warm enough over the course of the winter? How is all that going to be happening, and how is it going to be cleaned and gotten rid of. All that. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I could address that. Like,
To the board. Thanks.
to the board. Bedding, there really isn't a bedding. Their fur grows to 7 inches thick in the winter. They're naturally cold animal, they love cold, up to about 25 below zero. So their colder it gets, their fur goes longer. The only bedding you have is chips, fine wood chips. We usually put it on top of the little area where they go poop, kind of absorbs it. Okay, which kills any chance of smell, further smell. Okay, we've never had a rodent in 4 years we lived there. We have inundated with chipmunks, but they don't like the animals. They run from. Okay, that they're just literally is, they eat hay, second growth hay, second cut. The feed is a mixture for alpacas that's kept in a nice bin, sealed, and they eat grass. And that's it. That's all they eat. They're a very simple animal to maintain, and they're just a great pet. And the one woman did say, yes, you can bring them in your house. They're domesticated. You can raise them in your house, they can live in your house. We don't, but you could do that. We did back in the 16th century, they did that. We won't do that here. But they're a clean animal. They clean themselves, you never have to wash them. They automatically clean their own fiber themselves. And they're just a great animal to have.
I'm Tim Cohen. I live with your neighbor. I live downhill. I was a drain line, a fancy name.
Your
for
address?
sewage.
843 Oakwood, right?
That's what I'm worried about. I live downhill and it rains in my property. It's like a river runs through it between me and my neighbor. Like my son said, I had to put a lot of drainage in my property because I get nothing but water coming when the Learys lived there. It would roll down the hill. But it's not they poop, they pee, and they call it a drain line. Well, to me, I flush the toilet as a sewage line. So you better look into the drainage coming down on my property and all that water. I have 4 pipes coming out on each side of my house. Man next door to me has about 3 or 4 pipes. Well, that water comes down Oakwood Ave, it runs across from their property into my property. It's a ton. And that's what I'm worried about. So can answer the question. Drain line, I call it a sewage line.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Michael Gates, I'm at 859 Oakwood Ave. My wife and I are the applicants. And I guess just to address some of the concerns, the question was brought up, how much land we have. Surprisingly, we actually have just about 3 acres in the village. You actually, as you're driving past, you can't see our house because we are completely covered in trees. And I know one of the concerns was about the trees. Are the alpacas going to eat all of the trees? No, we're not going to let the alpacas just eat the trees. They will be in a fenced in area within our property. Our property is fenced in as it is, but we obviously, just like anyone else, want to maintain your property. So we're going to be fencing them in as they should be fenced in. We're going to be using a shed, just an Amish shed. We don't have to build this massive barn for it. They can be in a small space like that. And in terms of drainage, we have all of the same problems that everybody else does. In fact, all of the water comes from Elmwood and goes through everyone's backyard into our backyard. And so we had to do the same exact thing as everyone else has done. We actually dug out a massive part of our yard this past spring to help to ease the drainage, which actually did help some of our neighbors. So with that, again, I guess just to reiterate, they will be in a fenced-in area. You actually, again, you can't see our property because it is covered in trees all the way around. And they'll be in a small area. And in fact, they will be not on the Oakwood side. Our plan is to put them in the back of our property. And so on the complete other side of somewhere the concerned neighbors are.
So I know your property because I painted the house when the Larrys owned it.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with your setup. So this is going to be an island pool in the southeast corner of the property, back up in that area.
Southwest.
Southwest.
Yes. again, that's where, you know, if you look through, we call it the woods, you can't even see the houses on Lake Hill.
Yeah, it's all lawn right up.
It's all lawn
And
until
so part of that lawn is going to be your pasture.
yeah, they'll be on the lawn. Yes.
Yeah, so setback from the Lake Hill property line. How far will they, what's the setback?
I mean, we haven't measured it out, but through the trees, because again, we're not going to disturb any of the existing trees that are there. In fact, one of the things that we actually did this year is in addition to the existing trees, you know, sometimes in the, you know, the winter time, you can actually, you know, see through. So we actually planted over 100 trees around our property to help with that as well. We did that this year.
You expand on the drainage.
Yeah, so we actually took an excavator and we dug out probably as wide as this is by 50 feet long and just dug it all out and then put stone in a drainage pipe and sent it out to the street. Because again, it's all coming off of Elmwood through the backyards and then through there.
So you have a pool on the Elmwood side of your property?
Yes.
So where was the drainage work? Was it between the fenced in area you proposed on the map and Oakwood?
So it was between the pool and, yeah,
The pool and
to the left, to stop all of that water. Yeah,
that water coming in this way?
yeah.
Do you see water traveling this way down?
No, in
the property
fact, our yard is very dry over there, so I don't know where the issue is there, but
Genders?
all females.
All females?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's males and females together, I don't know if it's really weird.
I think
Assume all the ones
we end up with more than 3. So we're just gonna go with females.
And are you following Steve's process as far as keeping the food in bins?
All of it. Yeah.
Steel bin with a lid.
Yeah, he's been great. We've actually been talking to him right along. We spent some time at Thistle Creek, and so they're very accommodating too, and he's very supportive of it. So,
What kind of dogs do you have?
yeah, we have a poodle, and we have standard poodle, yeah, and I don't know. A mutt. Yeah, I don't know what he is. No, I just don't know what he is. He's like half Brussels Griffon, half cockapoo. He's like a mix of anything like that. Yeah.
You're not concerned about that? Have they been around Alpaca?
They have not been around the package, but no, we're not concerned with dog people.
So I have,
Mm-hmm.
so we got, I'm assuming they're like overseeding, but like it says that, you know, owning an alpaca has been your lifelong dream.
Somebody said that?
Well, it's more mine than kids, it's really not.
Yeah, I don't know if they're talking about that.
So now, like, what I have, you have this thing for so long, and you just moved into the house that lasted year. Why did you move to the Leary house and not look in the town where you moved out?
I would say, I think for us, if we were to prioritize our lifelong dreams, our children and their lives come first before alpacas. And so, I mean, it's a great property. It's, you know, again, being the size that it is in the village, for our kids to grow up there, that comes first. So, and obviously our kids come before anything that we do. So, for us, moving there, knowing again that the village did already approve, an alpaca permit, allow us to have both. As opposed to moving somewhere outside where the kids, couldn't ride their bikes, to school and do all of those things. So that gives us the opportunity to be able to do both.
I just make sure, where you live is over on Buffalo Road. It is on the end of the village. And you're next to one neighbor and then there's not same park.
No, we live two neighbors across the street, within the 300-foot radius, all approved originally. Okay, we have from Dollar General, we're the 7th house, there's 13 houses on our side of the road. Knox Farm is part of our backwoods. Okay, but we have residents everywhere. Both sides of the road. The school, in fact, is 600 people. So we walk them over to school.
Are you anticipating any change in traffic, or you'd be able to do all your feed and whatnot with pickup truck or something?
Oh, yeah, no change in traffic.
Are you anticipating having visitors on a regular basis, to scout come for the animals, any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, if they ask, but it's not something that we're gonna proactively seek out. But if people do ask to come,
We're not anticipating any big change.
no, we're not gonna sell tickets to come to the alpacas or anything like that, no.
Alpaca rides.
No.
What do you think about season for French drain?
Well, I guess. Is that I guess I don't know what that is. Is that a?
We just always did, we dug a pit, 3-foot diameter, 4 foot deep, ran a drain line from the barn, underground to it. Done.
Yeah, that's easy.
Leaches right in the ground, can't go anywhere, can't wash anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking about the
Yeah.
neighbors' concerns about it washing their property.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's easy. Yeah.
And one, real quick, I'm sorry, one thing, our drain actually goes outside, and our neighbor Kathleen next door, who wrote a testimony to us, I can read it to you if you want. She smells nothing. It's outside underground, and she was concerned about that 3 years ago when we applied. And she's happier than ever. There's no issues.
Ask you, Steve, you had, I'm trying to remember, back in 2018?
Yeah.
Did the neighbors on either side, I know the west across the street, did the neighbors on either side also send supporting letters?
Yeah, Vicky Nowicki next door and Kathleen Locke next door, which I have a testimony if you'd like to read
No,
it.
I haven't.
Okay, and they researched it, and they love it now. Kathleen, in fact, brings her grandsons over all the time. Walks across the yard, sees them all the time.
Or anything else for Michael? Your letter talks a little bit about vaccinations and stuff, so does that help control things like, fleas and ticks, that kind of things that you associate with deer and dogs?
You are above my pay grade at this point, but I'm sure there's either Steve or my wife can answer that one.
I'll speak for them. Okay, yeah, you get, the vet comes out every year for a rabies shot, and then we give monthly shots to the animals that prevent them from the parasites from the deer. That the snails drag across grass, the deer food leaves an oil. And if those alpacas eat that grass and the oil, they can get a spinal issue and die. So we give them a shot once a month. Solves that problem year round, even though the winter kills it, we still give it year round. And they're cheaper to own for vet wise than any dog I've ever been. So we have dogs. Okay, so, and you just maintain it like any other dog, you take your dog to a vet, you only have a vet come out once a week.
Their little pen is. I know.
Some research says that if you get alpacas, even if pets, they should be all being the same gender. So I was wondering, are yours going to be like all male or all female?
All female.
When you have friends, family, Steve's gonna pitch in, I don't know, but when you go away, vacations, things of that nature, you gotta. It's kind of.
I did actually
plan.
say that he was gonna help us out with that, yeah.
We're in.
Yeah.
Which is something I actually did not think about. So he mentioned it before, I was like, oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You gotta find out package.
That's the next permit.
That's the next one.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Mary Ann Colopy, 365 South Grove. The concern I have is not about this particular permit. The concern I have is the general regulation of farm animals within the village. We have a situation here where there's somebody who happens to have 3 acres. What if somebody comes in and says, I want to have 3 alpacas in my 30-foot lot? Okay, so and people want goats, people want chickens, people want pigs, people want alpacas, people want llamas. I think the board needs to look at tightening or solidifying or clarifying a position generally on agricultural animals within the village versus traditional domesticated cats, dogs. We can have baby ponies. We can have baby. So I really encourage the board to think about this in a larger context.
The alpacas are not a super big animal, they're not like animal, and they don't attract any other animals. I go over to Stevens a lot. I've never seen that. The deer are the bigger problem in this village.
Sorry, Jim Tresman, 160 Blake Hill Road. I agree. Part of me, like almost, I think that concept of having alpacas, it's just my opinion, but it is a little ridiculous in the village. Just my opinion. But part of me almost wishes, she's right, like that someday everybody in the village owns an alpaca. I kind of hope that because it would be as ridiculous as this is. And we were all walking around with alpacas. We would be the town of alpacas. That's fine. If that's what we want. I mean, that's something that I'm almost wishing upon the village of East Aurora at this point if they allow the alpacas to come in. But nonetheless, to address a different point that was made all due respect to the Gates family, of course, but they said that they had a fenced-in property. My property is in the back of their property, 160 Blake Hill. And a couple of years ago, the fence is in such disrepair back there. That's the fence they're referring to. That I had to put up my own 14-gauge steel fence up there just to line their property line back there so that I could really protect the deer from coming in, but also in case my kids were back there because a deer actually jumped the fence back there. And maybe you were aware of this or you're not aware of this, but it actually cut itself. And that's the friendly term. And a police officer, an East Aurora Village police officer had to come in and put the deer down afterwards based on it jumping over their fenced-in yard. So that fence is in horrible disrepair. I'm not sure if that's the property line, but I'm not sure where the barn is going to go, but it seems like the barn is going to go right behind that property, which is my property right there. And again, the statements that were made, like about the llamas that are already in town, it sounds like 100% of I'm sorry, the alpacas, the 100% of the alpacas that live here, or that they have, their alpacas are good, but are 100% of the alpacas good? Are all alpacas good with animals? Because my dog hates everyone. Okay, I have a dog that loves everyone and a dog that hates everyone. And I promise, I'm 99% sure, because I can't give you the 100% sure, and my dog will hate those alpacas. And it will bark at those alpacas every time that those alpacas come to that fence line. So that's a major concern for me, is that where's that barn going in respect to they have 3 acres. That's great for them. I have a half an acre. And you know, and their woods butts right up to my property. And it's a major concern with those alpacas. Like, because we hope what this guy said, Steve, that all alpacas are perfect. They don't smell. They don't, they urinate all in the same spot. They defecate the same. That's great. Is that 100% true for all alpacas? I don't know if that's true or not, but take that into consideration, please, when you're considering this, because I don't know that to be true. Just because he says it doesn't make it true either. So.
Love this. Okay, so I would just like to speak, since it was brought up that this is obviously more my dream than Mike's. He's just a supportive husband. So first I want to bring up the point of allowing someone to have an alpaca and then the whole town turns into alpacas. So that is a valid point. If I were to turn to this audience and say, how many of you now want an alpaca? I can almost bet you're not all going to raise your hand. I don't think it starts a trend to have this as a pet. It's true there are people with chickens in the village. And for those people, great, they come to the meeting, they also get approved just as we're trying to do. As far as being a weird animal, sure, it's different, but it is an animal that is quite domesticated, that can be trained with obedience, and an amazing family pack. So if you look, we have 3 of those. So this teaches love, companionship, family members, responsibility. I'm sorry, but I don't consider it a weird pet. As maybe somebody has a bunny rabbit, that's weird. A fish tank, what do? I don't know. So I feel like everyone can look at their definition of what a pet is, but we all have our reasons. And I do want to address the concern with your property being your ours. We are blessed to have these 3 acres. Absolutely. This house is my dream house. I started a whole Instagram page about it. We used to drive by this house and wave and say, hi, dream house. The fact that we got it is, I pinch myself daily. It's amazing. And we plan to be here until our children are buying the house from us, hopefully. When I think of our property and we're surrounded by trees and we did 100 more, we did that because we too like our privacy. We too like to have our piece of land for us and our family. And when I think of the alpaca dwelling, I can tell you with certainty that this dwelling would be further from you than your furthest neighbor. And so, if that settles you at all, I hope. So between the trees, the distance of this, the fact that what was brought up, are all of them great? I mean, with all due respect, you said your dog's not. That's not your fault.
I didn't say my dog's not great.
No,
I did not say my dog is not great.
Okay, address the board.
Never said that.
So he said his dog doesn't like everybody. And I know dogs. You guys know I know dogs. And it's unfortunate when that happens. So can I with certainty tell you that these alpaca are going to love everyone? I cannot. But I can tell you that we would be good pet parents to them and would allow individuals and our children to be safely around them as we would a dog that may not go love everybody. And so, I don't know, our house is not near anyone. I don't know if any of you have ever even met us, though we've lived there since November of 19. And because we are recluse and we're in our big yard and we're surrounded by trees, and I personally don't feel like this would interrupt anyone's lives or water issues or dogs. There are a lot of dogs around us. I hear them and I smell them. They're kind of noisier and smell. There's an alpaca I can attest. I do have 2. So that's all I'm saying.
I don't. My my parents were really good friends with the and they told me, and I just want to know that I was told that you guys did a lot of work done to the house. And I want to know how much more work needs to be done. And what is that gonna do for the alpacas?
That is a good question. We have done quite a bit of work. We bought a 130-plus-year-old home. And anyone in this village knows they need a lot of TLC. And so we have been continuously, since moving in, redoing, renovating, remodeling our home. We do have more work to do. We do plan on making some changes as well to the property, but where the alpaca dwelling would be, it is far enough from the house that any construction that is done wouldn't interfere with the animals.
Keep after.
If there is an alpaca actually.
Yeah, I just want to address a couple of things that were said, and I agree with Mary Ann as far as the town probably should consider down the road what kind of animals and the size of lots are going to be involved. But one thing that's to be understood is alpacas are not farm animals. Period. They are domesticated animals. By any stretch of imagination, that is their definition. They are a domesticated animal, not a farm animal. Number two, 1 acre of land supports 10 alpacas. That is a fact. It's not just hearsay, that is a fact. So we have 2 on roughly 1 acre of land. We have 1 more in Spike. They got 3 acres. It supports it, but it's not a farm animal. Okay, but the town should down the road. I would never have alpacas if we had done like we are in the village and we had 1/3 of an acre and the house takes up 1/3 of that. You would never do that. Then you got your driveway, then you get your front yard. But what they have and what we have allows us to do that with a domesticated animal. And another thing is, talk about dogs, it's not the alpacas, it's the dogs that scare the alpacas.
You blaming dogs?
Alpacas, we have dogs, we have dogs, okay, we've got dogs for life. There are dogs out there that are mean that can scare the alpacas, and the alpacas will run into the shed and or a barn. They'll run away from it, they're scared of it, okay? They don't do anything to the dog, they don't even spit at it. They just run because they're afraid. That's why they don't like coyotes, because coyotes scare them. That's it.
So, other research I was doing told me that, 1 acre of land was necessary. But they said, like, then they said 2 acres, they actually say 2 acres should be considered necessary because the property has to be rotated every year because of like where they're going to bathroom, they're eating their food, I know more about that because it sounds to me like no matter where they put the alpacas, their fencing is gonna be rotated to every spot on their lawn.
Well, I address that, Paul, now. Okay, you don't even move the fence, you don't rotate the yard. They just eat the grass. When the grass is done, then over here, they'll go over here. And this grass grows. We haven't done a thing to our backyard for years. Okay, and again, I want to stress, when you take a bag of poop home, when you get the alpacas, and you put it in the barn in one spot, and you put it in one spot in the yard, they do not go anywhere else. They only go where they can smell. And we've had it for 3.5 years, and it's 2 spots, that's it. We've got 2/3 of an acre yard. You can walk through that with no smell. We don't have to cut the grass anymore, they're automatically mowers for us, saves us time. But you never rotate them. You don't have to move a fence or replant grass unless you want to get it thicker. Okay, but it is 10 animals per 1 acre is what they say, no more than that. And we have to.
Are they naturally just grazing
Yeah.
animal that
Yeah.
there's no feed or
Well, in the summer,
is there feed
in the summer, there's feed year round, and there's hay year round. In the summer, they eat less hay if you have a lot of grass. Okay, like it's really long, they'll eat more grass. But if it's thinner grass, you feed them twice a day with grain, you feed them twice a day with hay. And during the day, they're out grazing.
Now, hay takes up some room. What do you do to not only store it, but maintain it, keep rodents, things from
The food,
making it their nest?
food,
No, hay, that's the
Hay?
the hay.
the hay, you only give it to them in a bucket. They don't sleep on the hay.
What about your storage?
Storage, we have bales of hay inside the barn itself, away from them, stacked. Okay, on the concrete floor, we have a concrete floor. And we just take a little bit every, they eat about, 2 animals will eat 37 bales a year. It's roughly what it takes. You know. And you just feed them 2 buckets every day, morning and night, and that's it.
Dawn Cousins from 60 Lakeville. So I don't think it was confirmed, but it sounds like the pen kind of gonna be near our end of the property. So I don't know, I'm sorry. I don't know if it was confirmed or not, about the fencing. So as my husband mentioned, the current fencing is in very bad repair, pretty dilapidated. So not only would that put the alpacas at risk, if they were to go through the woods to our property line or our fences, but also there's a family of deer that live on our street that go throughout the village, but they always pass through. So I don't know, and Stephen, you can answer this. I don't know what the interaction is, if the alpacas are afraid of deer, and if the deer comes through, are the alpacas then gonna run through the woods and possibly kind of get hurt on that fence? So I'm just wondering if there's gonna be a fence in front of the woods.
That's up to the case for the fence. We have a fence, obviously. We have a herd here in our woods in Knox's Farm. Probably 20 to 30. And they'll come right up to the fence and they sniff each other. We had a deer actually jump the fence last year and got in with them and was walking around. And then they jumped over the fence and went back out again. Yeah, they love the deer. They're just, they look at each other. That's all they do. Yeah. Yes.
I have a quick question for you, Keith. Now the shed, I saw in the drawing is a 12 by 40, then you're gonna do a fencing off of that shed, correct? Like a corral?
Yeah.
So you have a corral within, you have a fence around the perimeter of your property, then you're corralling them away from that, correct?
Yes, and so I wanted, yeah, so the shed would be towards your property, there'd be the fence, the trees, the shed, the fence.
A corral, more of a corral.
Right, so the animals are towards the house, not close enough to construction about it, but the animals are towards the house, between the house and that shed, before you get.
So they're not gonna be roaming loose throughout your
It
yard.
will be
They're
fenced in
contained in the
within our-
corral, and then they
We're not
have
letting
their,
in the house.
then they have their barn to go in.
I have another question or concern. And that is, this couple has stated that they have 3 acres, but isn't, and I'm terrible with figures, like we can tell you, but doesn't the house, the garage, and the large in-ground pool take up part of that 3 acres? I mean, that's inclusive, right? Of the 3 acres? Okay.
Yes.
So then that does cut down, and I seriously, I don't know about that gentleman's alpaca. I really don't. I saw them once uptown. They look fine. But we have watched several videos. They will shriek if they are frightened. They sometimes, maybe not his dog. We don't know these alpacas that they're gonna get. We don't know what will frighten them, but they will shriek if they are frightened. And it's a loud shriek. And if something came in and scared them in the middle of the night, it would be shrieking. So that's one concern that I had about that. And they bite and kick also. They don't even have, they can't.
No.
The male alpaca gets teeth when they're 3 years old. And they they can bite and they will kick inadvertently if something gets behind them, just like
Yes.
a horse or some other animal. I'm just saying it's a consideration. I'm not saying if they're alpacas, if it is alpacas or the alpacas, aren't gonna be perfect, but they're an animal. You know, and with supervision.
Thank you.
I guess
Steve, Ray.
Yeah, there's a belief out there that alpacas spit also. And the female alpacas do not spit literally at all. The males will spit if they get aggressive. If somebody scares a male alpaca, they will spit. Like a llama spits all the time. Alpacas are part of the camelid family. Okay, they'll spit. And males also are more aggressive because the females, one of the reasons you don't have a male and female together. Females are always in heat 365 days a year. And the males know this. So if you have a male and female, you cannot corral them together or they can stay together unless you're ready to breed them. Okay? But the females are so docile. They just literally, all they do is hunt. The only noise we've ever heard out of our animals in 300 years is the hunt noise. If they get excited over their food, and that's it. But they don't bite. They only have one row of teeth. That's in the bottom. They have no teeth in the top. It's a leather palate. That's why they don't chew when they're once somebody brought up bark. They really can't chew bark because it's too hard for them. Then they take it off and pick it off the ground and they'll spit it out. Okay. But they only have teeth on the bottom.
As far as the kicking goes, don't they have a softer?
It's a rubber thing. You cut it with a piece of shears. In the males, it's all rubber. Yes, males, if you get behind any animal, like a horse, will kick you to death. And if you scare them, they'll kick you, but you don't really, it doesn't hurt you. But they will kick you. We've never been kicked 300 years and we'll walk by now. We give them shots. I'm the one that has to give them shots. They haven't kicked me. But the females, the reason we have the females because they are really easy to take care of.
All right. Anybody else? Hand up your steps. Look at an auction, right? The back?
If this is approved, will the town come to Jason's property, inspect the shed, the property, the drainage, for the waste and everything to ensure that it's not going to potentially leak?
Code enforcement officer, Cassidy.
You can make that a condition.
Anyone else? All right. Also, the public hearing in the morning. What communication did you get from the public?
We got 4 letters from the public where we got addresses and one against, which was in the 500-mile radius, and that was 824 Oakwood Avenue. There were 3 for, they were not in the 500 radius, but it was 11039 Big Tree Road, 242 Oakwood Avenue, and 809 Martin Drive. You all received them via email.
So they're not impacted, directly impacted.
Only the one was in the radius where we send out mailers, which was the 824 Oakwood. And 52 mailers were sent out.
I did receive 3 calls against, but they preferred to remain anonymous. So their concern was more keeping good relationships with the neighbors. So they can't be considered.
Their policy. If somebody sends in a letter or call or an email and they want to remain anonymous, we don't take that into consideration. If somebody can get their friend from college in Phoenix and send something, right? It's only the people in the community affected by it who are willing to come forward and identify themselves who should be allowed to. All right, so the public hearing, I think it's done. What, anything else? All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing at 8:10 p.m.?
So moved.
Moved by Steve, second by Paul, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to official considerations. Can I get a motion regarding approving the local law number 4 for proposed changes to the village code, chapter 156 for historic preservation. Moved by Tony, second. Second by Kristen. Further discussion on that. Do a roll call vote, starting with Steve. Aye. Kristen?
Aye.
Marcia? Aye. Ernie?
Aye.
Tony? Aye. Paul? I'm an aye. That's approved. Moving on to 4B. Can I get a motion regarding the consideration of approval of special use permit 54 Elm Street, West Coast Taco applicants, Chelsea and Nathan? So moved. Moved by Steve, second. Second by Marcia. Further discussion? Sean, I'm sure you're gonna do a great job.
Yes, yes, I will, sir. Absolutely.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. 4C, can I get a motion to consider approving a special use permit for 391 Olean Road for Wojo Ninja Warrior Gym Facility applicant Sarah Adams? Moved by Kristen, second by Paul. Further discussion there? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. All right, regarding the consideration for the permit for field package at 859 Oakwood Ave by Amy and Michael Gates. I don't know. You want to throw it out there, maybe we table it for the next meeting. And I guess my thought, and you guys can do whatever you want, obviously. I guess my thought is we've had 5 people in the neighborhood who have spoken out to some degree against it. But from the correspondence we've gotten, the conversations we're having, I feel like there's a certain amount of education that needs to occur. And I think a lot of their concerns would probably be alleviated. So perhaps I'm just throwing that out there as an option that maybe if you table it, that would give the applicants time to meet with their neighbors and educate them on alpacas, with some of Steve's wisdom, and maybe answer, take care of some of the concerns. Or you guys can make a motion to approve it, we can vote on.
Well, permit can always be revoked.
Correct.
So if it doesn't work out and it turns into a complete nightmare, which I don't personally believe it will, but if things don't go right, it can be revoked. But I know from having gone to Steve's property and visited and I've observed, you know, the alpacas and their living conditions and, you know, it's exactly what he says. You know, there is no smell. It is clean. There's no problem. I also know the property they live on from 25 years ago. I know it's probably changed since then, but it's a big yard. It's a big lawn. If you're moving it in, what you say you will be, and they will be fenced in. And they're quiet, the way Steve's alpacas are. And you maintain the condition of the shed, beyond the shed. And if it doesn't work out, if it's screaming, like somebody said they do, which I don't know that they do. Steve says they don't. And I believe Steve, because I trust them because I see this, you know, how it's worked out for them, for he and Liz. You know, we could always change your mind.
My thought is changing our mind involves them getting alpacas and then having to get rid of alpacas. And I'm hoping that if the neighbors who have concerns have those concerns taken care of in advance, get everybody on board, right? Like when Steve applied and all his neighbors wrote letters supporting it, he had buy-in to begin with, there's less chance that everybody knew what they're gonna do.
Maybe they need to visit this place and see how it's, you know, if they really can get an idea as to what it's like. So I had no idea. You know, I didn't know that they were the kind of animals that they are. I've worked with horses for a lot of my life, and you know, they're snow. I didn't realize that they were, you know, as clean and neat, and pleasant to be around as they are. You know, I didn't know, maybe they need people need to go visit. Maybe they need to go see, if they're willing, if you guys are willing to let them see your operation. I don't know, it's a lot to ask, but, you know, maybe that's something people might want to. There are others who haven't had a chance to actually look at, haven't been contacted to actually walk the property and see where this is going to go. You know, I think one of the neighbors mentioned that they didn't really even know that was happening. And they kind of out of the loop, and they need to come over and take a look. So I thought it was also good to bring up the fact that while the building department is short-handed right now, you can always bring up issues like runoff as being something to bring to the building department attention, and the code enforcement officer can go out there and look at issues with, you know, water going at the neighboring property. And things like that. So another avenue to look at some of the issues that may be open right now and foster some of that education, whether it's about a package specifically or just being equipment. You know, we tend to get trapped in our house, especially in the last year and a half. Sometimes you need to pick up the phone and knock on the door and see if there's something that, you know, can be easily worked.
My feeling is that, the neighbors that were contacted are those that are within, the required distance. It would be really great if you reached out, I feel, to expand that group a little bit. It's all about education. And as Tony said, you know, we're always trying to help facilitate neighbors talking to neighbors. I think that's really important. On your application, you have 2 or 3. For me to be able to support it, I'd sure like to keep it to 2. I think conditions that maybe should be considered if we want to approve this is the fence repair must be done to make sure that the perimeter is appropriately enclosed and the French drain must be installed to address the runoff and to deal with any potential waste issues. So those are sort of my thoughts about it. But I'm thinking with if there's a need to educate or get more people involved, maybe postponing is a good idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I think anytime we get a volume of information like this on both sides, especially when it's something that we're not necessarily experts in, I'm not sure, because there ones that we don't have the experts. It's really prudent to go back and do some research and make sure what it's called. And it gives everybody more time to communicate also. We're always trying to encourage.
So, I'll make a move to table until our next meeting. September 7th.
To Tuesday.
Right? Yes,
Did you want it held off longer? Is that better for you?
Just our first day of school.
Oh,
I feel like that's a lot, but, you know,
They're meeting 2 weeks after
I can
that.
also tell you that like, I need to over this, so perhaps next meeting.
The meeting after that?
No, she says
Oh.
Yeah,
The
the
second
seventh, yeah,
yes.
because a peace of mind. with that.
I'll second. There you go.
Thank you. Number 7 is the motion made by Marcia, second by Crystal. Oh, you did want the 20th?
No, the
Oh,
7th.
no, she walked it back. She wanted to have it. All right, further discussion on the motion table. I think it's a good idea, for everybody, to get their minds around it. I think, public comment time is already up.
Okay, I just want to make.
So what I'm saying is, I think this is a good opportunity for you to educate your neighbors, like you said. And take care of the concerns. I really think most of their concerns are just something that could be handled by the wisdom of Steve and you guys need to know about that. Maybe address the concerns about the French drain, talk about the females only, fencing concerns.
Maybe a slight visit to Steve.
Maybe Steve does it too in the neighborhood.
Sure. Alpaca. So I think just going to see where the other alpacas live, I think helps too. I mean, I was impressed.
And it'd be good for us too.
What the setup
to go see it. Have a feel for it.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? It's able to accept. 4E, can I get a motion to consider approving a temporary use permit for the Tuesday outdoor market at the Elm Street Bakery, 72 Elm Street until November? So moved. Moved by Steve, second. Second by Marcia. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Can I get a motion to consider approving a temporary use permit for the Roycroft Campus Fall Festival, October 2nd and 3rd? Moved by Steve, second. Second by Kristen. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. You get a motion to consider enacting, public hearing for September 7th. Can I get a motion to consider setting a public hearing to discuss the establishment of a moratorium regarding flag lots in the village for September 7th? Moved by Marcia, second. Second by Tony. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Can I get a motion to consider awarding the auction from Auctions International for Ford Explorer to Tony for $9,600? By Kristen, second. Second by Marcia. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Can I get a motion to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, September 7th to consider the following applications for the proposal of 300 Glebe Ave to develop 24 apartment units, including the site plan and the special use permit? Moved by Steve, second. Second by Tony. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Second, speakers and communications. Your opportunity, if you have any issues or topics you want to discuss, raise your hand. When called on, tell us your name and address and what your issue is. Anybody?
I have a question.
Yes, name and address, please.
My name's Doug Wolf. I'm 429 Oakwood, and this pertains to your flag lot moratorium. I'm curious why you're tabling discussion, and what the motivation for the moratorium in the first place is.
They cannot act on a moratorium without having a public hearing as required. So they have to do that.
On the 7th, then, we're going to have a public hearing with regards to that. It's being tabled so that there will be the notification going to be in the paper.
There will be notifications sent out for the public hearing.
Okay, so that will be a public hearing. Now, at that point, meeting, will it be voted on? Will it be determined whether or not the moratorium will be put in place at that point? Or is this just a period of discussion
That will be decided by the board at that time.
at that time? Okay.
You could vote on it. You could decide not to vote on it. You could
I see that.
postpone it. Yeah.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
Just mention, this meeting.
I'm sorry, name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Joe Jacobs, 93 Council. This meeting was not on the calendar on the village website. It was, I know we got the notice in the mail, and then it was postponed when we got second notice. But I don't believe that this meeting was on the calendar on the website. So I went to look at it just to double check.
Was it?
The meeting for tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's underneath, it was on the front page and then it was underneath, minutes and agendas.
It was something about, I'll have to go back and look at it. But if you could just check that, just make sure. I had somebody else look at it too, if they didn't see it.
Yeah, it was in two spots. on the webpage.
Anybody else?
Can I ask, comment again on the alpacas?
Sure.
Okay. My really big concern is that the board and the comments in general seem to be focusing on this particular family, their particular lot. What happens if these folks subdivide their property? What happens if these folks, what is to prevent people from smaller properties having this? What's to prevent them from breeding these animals? Because alpacas are bred for meat. They have 3 females. There's nothing to say they're not going to have some breeding going on. As I mentioned before, there needs to be something in place to address the blurring of lines between pets and agricultural animals. And my husband grew up on a pig farm and he loves his pigs, but we're not going to have a pig in our garage. But could we put in a special use, asking us to keep a nice little pot-bellied pig in the garage? We could. I strongly urge there to be some
Well, you know what,
further
Diane,
consideration.
our code currently says no. No farm animal?
Livestock,
Only dogs and cats.
You
I
can,
don't know the exact verbiage, but
you can eat alpacas. Alpacas are raised for meat.
but I'm just saying, we have approved alpacas, I think we approved the pig ones, we've approved bees,
Yep.
30 chicken permits, but they're all on an individual basis, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody comes along and they've got, they live in a condo and they want alpacas, it's not gonna get approved, right? If somebody has 3 acres of property, maybe they do. You know what I mean? So it's a case by case basis. It's already written in our code, you can't have farm animals without approval. You know, so that's in, I think we approved two colonies of bees. You know, I'm just saying the last 15 years. Probably 30 permits for 3 dogs, 25 permits for chickens.
So the board is comfortable with take case by case by case. And that's okay. I'm just trying to understand this.
There's a little flexibility.
Okay.
I'm just, I'm concerned about the neighbors who don't approve of this, how they're actually gonna be able to be heard, and they don't approve of it. So,
Sir in the back, did you want to contribute at all? The masked man?
Yeah, thank you. My wife and I showed up tonight because we received a notice in the mail for Willardshire, a flag lot.
On Willardshire? Okay.
We went there.
They had a sign that said the meeting was being held here.
The village.
The village, this is the village.
Oh, everything
meeting
was,
at town.
everything was packed up,
What time did you get there?
like 20 to 7.
They might.
Well, when
Did you go to the back door?
Yeah.
That's the way we went.
And then the thing was crashed.
Sometimes Florida unlock it, or
Liz, their meeting starts at 7, right?
Yeah.
That
one's over.
Is it over?
Hey,
6.
the letter says.
Well, they start the work session at 6 and then that runs right into the regular meeting whenever they get done with that. But you enjoyed our company.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Have a good night, everyone.
Get old.
Okay, student communications is over. Department head report, Shane?
Just
briefly, I signed, or I sent a letter to BOCES probably about a year ago now, supporting their efforts to get a Department of Justice grant for giving them the ability to have course study into school violence threat assessment, as well as having the ability to have anonymous complaints forwarded from staff or students regarding threats within their schools. I just got notice that I sent to Kathy and Chris, yeah, regarding an MOU that they, sorry, Chris. An MOU that BOCES asked me to sign just to go along with them. They did receive the grant. Our part of it's very minimal. Basically, if they get a threat that's based out of our BOCES in town, we'll investigate it for them and assist them and join them in trainings as we can. So I'll be signing and sending that back off to them, and it's just another tool for them to use to make BOCES a safer school. So besides that, I hope to have another police officer candidate in front of you on September 7th. We're in the process of doing the background and interviewing one individual. Seems like a very quality candidate. And by the time we do that, it sounds like one of our officers will be leaving kind of into retirement. So that'll keep us right back looking for another police officer, so, or two. So that's it.
I have a question,
Yep.
just following up from the last meeting. You were going to kind of keep an eye on the traffic and the parking situation on Hamlin.
Mhm.
Any update on that?
I haven't been noticed from my lieutenants that there are any issues. Every time I drive by, there's plenty of room. I don't know about, I did drive by Misters for their little mini music fest again this past Saturday at about 7 o'clock, and there was no congestion. And there's a lot of people out. So again, I know the neighbors in that area have a concern about it, but it's a brief period and it's not unusual to have a situation like that in numerous places in the village. So, but
From my own experience, it seems to be better.
yeah.
The only complaint I've gotten recently from the neighbors is there's been a couple cars that have done burnouts. And you can see the tread marks right by Hastings on Hamlin, between the cider house and and they just wanted, I guess, let us know that that's happening, but I don't know what we can do about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens quite frequently everywhere. Occasionally, we're lucky to have an officer in the area to see it, but not often enough.
Anybody here to speak to the DPW? Kathy?
So on Matt and his department's behalf, they've been working a lot in Hamlin Park, getting a lot of things done over there. They have finished the entire length of the track, grading the lawn right up to the track to the asphalt, and then they have just hydroseeded that. So hopefully in a nice period of time, and certainly going forward, that will be all, instead of the roughness around it that was originally built when the track was done, paved and expanded. It'll be really nice grass just going right up to the track. So it's just really nice, at least savory and baseball games and everything else. So they've been working on that. They did 4 new concrete pads, bleachers that are going in there. So they got that done. And otherwise, just throughout the village, they commissioned all the usual stuff that they are, since they finished their paving on the streets. They actually got the paving done this year. Then now they're going out and they're addressing potholes on all streets that didn't get paved, doing the hot patching on the potholes. So that's what they're doing.
And how are they doing as far as hiring labor Where's that at?
I know one started.
One started, they have more interviews scheduled for when Matt returns.
So we did actually have, related to that, the union representative employees requested a labor management meeting in the morning, and I attended that. There's actually a new person at the county level that represents state group along with Ron as our in-house person who is president of the union. I would have to say that it went very well. We've never met this person before, and as well as she never met us. And that really was a very productive and good meeting, getting together. So that worked out, well. Excellent.
How about the village administrative side of you?
So just you busy with all the normal stuff, no question, the culvert project is ongoing. The culvert project is going extremely well in my estimation. I've been sending out regular updates to the email list, and then as soon as I send the email list, I send it to you, so you know what's going on. All that. I was amazed and a little disappointed. I didn't even get to see the machine that pushed the pipes in the deep pipes into the old culvert pipe, but it's done. All those great big, you saw them out there, pipes that were in there got welded together and dropped in that hole and pushed over towards the 2.7 like to link into the old repair where that's done. And then the box culverts that are going in the prefabricated box culverts, they can only bring 2 of those in that whole tractor trailer. So those are very large, long, and then with the other dimensions out of it. They are being dropped into, obviously the trenches is dug, there's a great big amount of dirt there, and there's a lot of gravel there because it's the gravel and geotextile fabric in the base of that. And they started down at the outfall, and they have put 16 of those in already, which is, I think, is very quick and wonderful. It's been about 2 to 3 days. There are 45 of those to go into the entire project. The only thing is they can only every so often get the prep done for it, and then they got to get the massive crane that it's a very special, much larger than normal crane to pick up one of those pieces and then drop it in, and then obviously get it all perfectly in place. So what they're doing this week is they're just doing more excavation and doing the fabric and the stone and the base, and then it'll be a couple weeks before they'll be putting in some more of those the prefabricated pieces. So, but they're there. There's no question they're on schedule. So good news there that they're making good progress, and we're keeping in communication with all of the business owners over there and residents out there. So it's going well. We did have a phone meeting. Actually, Joe Hickman from Modern had contacted us yesterday. We absolutely have issues with the contract with the company about a year ago. I know Mayor, you were in a lot of phone meetings with Guy and Maureen and Matt and Christine. And I think they had some personnel issues that people were just doing what they wanted to do as far as a good job for our contract. That has, I hope you all agree with that, vastly improved and things are really down. Well, Christine has attested to that as far as they're almost non-existent. They're what you would expect now. If people put something up, it's not quite right, it doesn't make it double or whatever it is going to be. But so greatly improved. So we did check-in, annual check-in at this point, talking to the contractor. There is so much involved with it that you don't even think about as far as what we're doing coming up. We're actually coming up. This is we just started the 3rd year or 3-year contract. We have the ability to bid that out again at the 3-year juncture, which we would have to decide fairly soon. So we want to think about that. Or we can re-up again with mine if we think that they've really gotten that together and we want to keep them on. The thing with bidding is you don't know what's going to happen with the pricing. There's a line with the pricing. But there is also a lot of other things to do about as far as recycling, and if we're going to have totes, and then one else going to probably put out the fact that really started. And actually, Joe Hickman at Modern is putting me in touch with a person in Niagara County who does a whole consortium coordinated for communities up there with trash pickup. So I don't want to tell you that you don't want to know all the stuff that's involved that I have to figure out and work along, with our group internally here. And again, get some outside help and resources to figure out what some of our best options are going to be going forward. So, recycling is up and down. It happens to be up right now, which is very unusual. It's been down for so long as a commodity that you're actually paying to get rid of recyclable things versus getting money for recycled material. It's up a little bit right now, but that's always something to change. So we had a really good long meeting in Modern, and that I'm
That's Kathy? Point.
To add on to the garbage, I sent you guys all a questionnaire that I plan to send out to the people who did the garbage tote trial. If you have any comments that of other questions you might want to know, let me know and I'll add it to that. Otherwise, I'll probably send this out in about a week to get feedback. And then we have a grant that has opened for recycling, which can be used for the recycling tote of the two totes, so that there would be a garbage tote and a recycling tote. If we were to apply for that and get that, it would reduce the cost of the totes by about 50%. So it would be a good thing, especially because this would be for next year when we're rebidding our contract. And there would be a significant difference in the price depending on which way we bid and how we were going to have the pickups. So it's really something that you guys really have to consider, I think, now over, when we're rebidding it next time. We kind of have to get to know, so we're doing that. So hopefully we can get this feedback real quick so that you guys can think about it and see which way you want to go.
So you will apply for it, or?
I will apply if you tell me to apply for it,
So we've got the questionnaire is one thing, but that's for the people who have done the trial.
Yep.
And then is there going to be any kind of a questionnaire to the public, or?
You got to let me know if you'd like that. We can see about doing that. We could put like a survey online and people could click on it and see what their responses would be. And then you'd have to let me know what kind of information you'd want to know in those questions. This one here is very specific. I can email this one out to the people we know who participated, but that's really just going to have to be some kind of link where they're going to have to tell us who they are and make sure that, people from Japan are doing the surveys. And then we can look at that information too, so that I can tell you just knowing who makes the phone calls, asking if they can buy totes already, we get a lot of those questions. But you might get people who are saying, okay, we know that, but we don't care. We don't want to pay $50 for a tote. Totes cost $100 at Home Depot. It's a lot cheaper if we were able to get them for 50. So, we got to consider all that depending on what you want to do. And then the cost of the tote ideally will be saved in the savings we will have over the years of collecting the garbage, because it's from every vendor we've talked to, they say it's much more expensive to have the garbage picked up the way we have it picked up now versus using the totes in the long run.
The totes are actually about 3/4 of the amount of garbage, right? You can put out 4 garbage cans for 1 tote.
Right.
So, but then we pay by weight.
Well, we don't pay by weight
They pay by
currently.
weight.
They make the estimate, they make our estimate based on what our tonnage has been in the past. Some places do pay by tonnage, some places don't. So it's one of those things that you would consider when we put out the bid next time, saying, well, we can take quotes this way, we can take quotes that way. So, and then.
So they're taking less, it's not effective, there's less labor because the tote gets picked up by the truck automatically.
Well, that's part of
That's
it.
part of it.
That's part of it.
45 seconds versus some.
I know, I
other
get that part, but my question is, we pay by weight? When they
No,
quote,
when they quote, they
say
consider it.
there's Potential of 4 cans times however many residents, as opposed to, we know we have a definite figure, a finite figure of.
Yeah, we have 95-gallon totes. If that's what you guys limit it to, you could say every house could have 2 95-gallon totes, but we're only starting with 1. So where I live, I can have 4 95-gallon totes.
Okay.
But we only give every resident 1, and then you have to buy them if you want extra. But again, that's a lot more money because you have that option.
Wait, so you were saying that we pay by the potential to have 4 cans out. You were saying, right, that they go by the historic.
They look and say, historically, this village has done this.
So it's not actually assuming 4 cans, as most people, I hope, are putting out 4 cans every week, right? Most of them.
Yeah. And then the same thing with recycling. They're going to take into consideration recycling, but if we do the totes, the recycling will be picked up most likely, unless you don't want that, every other week.
Yeah.
And you'll have a 95-gallon tote for that possibly. You guys can deviate that, but it makes a lot of sense to have both 95 gallons, because then you can just switch the lids and it's easier for the village for inventory purposes.
Absolutely.
And the 95-gallon totes, if used for recycling, it's just an easy every other week. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem, and
No,
I,
know
ca- you know what I
people
mean?
who do it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Just things to take into account, like, seniors might have trouble wrestling those big totes out to the street or finding a space on the property.
There is a lot.
but that's the questions I think we wanna look at.
I like them better. I used to have the cheap ones with the little wheels on it, and it looked like the wheels would fall off. So then I got the heavy duty tote, and the garbage guys love it, because they just put it up on a thing, and it looks for them, And I think it's easier to pull out there.
I'm just thinking of like my 87-year-old parents just put out like one little bag of garbage a week. Yeah. So now they have to save up for a month and then roll that big thing.
I just think, put whatever.
No, but Julie, I was gonna say, you can
You're
come
not
out with.
gonna help them?
But I was gonna say, maybe the good brothers going to do that.
Hey, the other three brothers live in Florida, so I'm all I got. I'm as good as it gets.
That's your exercise.
So that's one thing, you guys can let me know, I guess, once we get that information back, if you want me to apply, the sooner I know if I'm gonna apply or not, so I can start working on it. The other thing is I did finish the Hamlin Park grant and submit that timely. Kathy helped work on it, Matt and the DPW, and all of my clerks helped work on that grant, so it was a huge effort.
That includes Hope Lounge. In the application, it's basketball court, tennis court, sidewalks, it's parking lots.
Yes.
So it would be fantastic, and would they give 40 of those out across the state?
I don't think
Up to
it's 40.
500. I thought it was up to $500,000.
Well, it's up to $500,000 up to the pot of money, but we didn't ask for 500,000. We were less than that. We were at 4. So there's, so if they have smaller projects, they can give out more grants. So it's really just up to the dollar amount that they have.
They have like 20 million in there.
I don't know off the top of my head. So, and then just another thing that was reviewing the ethics policy with Chris and Shane. So that'll come before you guys again.
Thanks, Maureen. Liz?
Oh, the building department was a little slow during the rainy time in July, but we're moving at full speed right now. You may recall the 3 minor lot subdivision on Mill Road that Morano just took over. They broke ground this week on that, so that'll be fully built out in a couple of months. And begun floodplain administrator training with the DEC. Bill had a contact there, and she and I went through the whole project for East Elmore on a preliminary basis. And then I have several trainings over the next couple of months, to figure my way through that. But that's it.
About Liz?
No.
Okay, I do want to say then, while we're still talking about Liz, thanks for going out there and spending time with that couple who just sat here for an hour listening to us talk about alpacas as the meeting they wanted to be at was going on, they totally missed it. So thanks for giving.
I don't know which meeting was better, to be honest.
They benefited from that one-on-one they got with you, then it was probably even better for them to be able to talk right to the boss. So
Yeah, I
thanks
feel
for
bad.
spending time with them, that was thoughtful.
Feel bad I didn't have a card. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I walked here today.
Hey Liz, anything cooking candidates or some assistance for you?
We've done some interviews, but at Maureen's suggestion, we're gonna run one more ad on Indeed to see if we are, have some additional possibilities, but we're working on it.
Thank you. Maureen, you want to add anything?
The pedestrian bike board has contacted me. I got the email this morning when I came in, and they want a grant written that has a large item plan that needs to be in by Friday. It's really just
What's a large item plan?
like a plan of exactly of what the village would want to do for the project, a detailed plan. I just don't think it can get done by Friday. and I mean, you guys have not said you want to put sidewalks in these places, or I'm sorry, an off-road bike path. So it's never, they wanted to put an off-road bike path along Olean from the railroad tracks to Main Street. And while I mean, if the board wants to do that and get the information, I think we could probably try the next go around for it, but just to be getting like
Where?
it's gonna be
Olean
parallel to
Road.
Olean. Yep.
Up by South Street?
Not a bike path like on the road, like an off-road.
Where? In people's yards?
Again, I just got this today. I haven't been able to talk to John. He just sent me an email.
Talked about going from South Street, the sidewalk. all the way from there.
Next
And
to
he's got a problem with the fact that the railroad, won't get. But it's basically taking over some grass in the right of way as opposed to trying to strike off part of the road. That was my understanding.
Is that
And-
because
and
the
it
road
was-
there is too dangerous, or what's the thought?
The road is narrow and, a little difficult to manage because people are speeding because of the fact that they come from, the area in the town.
I was just biking there last week and it's, in the road.
You know, I don't know, if this would involve, if they're gonna put it literally in the right of way between where it was an elevated curb and the sidewalk, and then in the tree lawn, and there's trees that would need to be taken out. I think this all came up was that, Mayor, you had gotten, the thing about the county.
Bicycle master plan webinar?
Yes, so, and I went to that, and John went to that, and, when I heard that whole webinar, it was all about all these places going to biking all around Erie County, but really didn't get all the way out to East Ross. I was like, well, that's all interesting, but it really didn't involve us, but it piqued John's interest, who was our local bicycle person in the village, chair of our board. And, he talked to Amy Wynette, who's in this group, and the first thing he sent to me, like right after this webinar, was if we could do something by August 17th, and this was still a couple weeks ago, and we put something in. I said, I have no idea. It depends on a whole lot of different variables and factors, and I have no idea what it would be. So he said he would get back to me. So he sent me something on Friday saying, do we have a grant writer, and can we get it all in by in a super short time frame? So I forwarded to Maureen, and she's been trying to talk to John since John had communicated with me. I think the time frame, as a practical matter, is too short.
I mean, we have to look at the next go around. I get that, but-
We have a pedestrian bike board. I mean, can they grant?
Well, John said he'd be willing to do as much as possible, but Maureen has to really do the entering.
I have to enter it all, and it's not even the entering it as much as there's all these requirements. And when you talk to a committee or another board, they're like, oh yeah, we should do this. And it's like, okay, but you got to look at all the finite things that you have to meet to qualify. So actually, I was reading this grant quickly this afternoon, and it says that you have to prove saving on emissions. Well, I don't know that we can necessarily prove that. So I'm not going to be able to prove that by Friday. Matt's not here to help me go through what's, happening in that road. I just, to get this information now, it's just really difficult. And I wrote that Hamlin one really fast, but that was considering we had the master plan. So I already had something in front of me. I knew this was something we were doing. I had a lot of knowledge about what was happening. The departments had a lot of knowledge. This is something that's just coming to us now. You guys don't even know what it is. You have to approve it. You have to tell me to write it. So I just look at this and say, this just isn't realistic. So what I'm trying to get at is there are lots of great things that we can do and our different committees and board would like done. But I think we need to kind of get them to give us that information ahead of time so that we can say, you know what, the bike board would like to do these 5 different projects and this board would like to do these. And yes, none of them are top priority where they have to get done now, but at least I can keep an eye open for them. Because the other part is there's a 20% match. Well, how much is this going to cost? Does the village have 20%? I don't know that we do right now, depending on how much the project costs. So we can't apply for every grant because people want them, because most grants have some kind of a match. And they're usually more in the 50-50, and that's a big deal too. So I can watch for it if they want to propose these projects to you, and then you guys approve them, and then we can start looking at them. But it's really hard when people just say, well, we should apply for a grant, when I don't know what the projects are. I don't know what the information is. I really think we have to get them to give it to us ahead of time so we can look for things that match the things you really want to do and not just be haphazardly applying for 50 grants.
Department heads, everybody?
Yeah.
Paul, you got anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of concerns about our tax about I'm just looking back. Last year, we made that new law saying that you can bypass the public hearing if you get the support from your direct neighbors.
That's only for chickens.
And as far as the lives, none of the direct neighbors are supportive. But and so we were going to put the responsibility on, the cases in this instance, reach out to their neighbors. And I don't know if they did. But now what we did tonight was say, okay, the responsibility for this approval is no longer on the gate. The gate is the responsibility of the neighbors to go visit these sites and see if it's something they would support. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I'm also wondering, so all the neighbors showed up tonight who were against it. And so at our next meeting, how are we gonna know if they all still don't support this, or if they change their mind and are now in support of it?
Question, and you could go out and talk to them, we could see if they respond. I mean, the one who emailed, obviously we emailed back, but there was 4 others that showed up tonight. But I would like to know, maybe, talk to the gates and say, hey, we need these folks on board. If you really want to ensure that the village board is going to support your application.
I think you make a good point, Paul, because really, there wasn't anybody here that was supporting them, other than Steve, I think, the expert Steve. And then we heard that there are people that are against it that want to see, but where was the support among the nearby neighbors? Maybe they also just assumed, oh, well, the gates talk to us, and we're good, so we don't need to come. I don't know. So how do we discern?
Wasn't the original alpaca that we did approve, weren't most of the neighbors pretty much against that at the time as well?
I remember we wrote letters in support. I actually found an email from the west right across the street.
Yeah.
And I remember the neighbor on each side you said, had sent letters in, I thought, and I mentioned, and Steve said he had the letter in his pocket, yeah. I don't remember about the backyard, for some reason I thought it backed up against the park. But only you said back up to a yard, yeah. I don't remember who lived there or what they saw. Part of it does, and part of it's the neighbor.
But I think in some ways, I think the Peaks have to do a better job of, selling their idea and educating their neighbors if it's really what they say it is, that they do have to reach out. You probably make a good point. They really need to be more active in showing the neighbors that this is not going to be a problem. That people aren't going to be, have to suffer for the alpacas there.
Just a quick question for you guys, because it's going to be me and Liz that deal with complaints after the fact. What's your threshold to withdraw the permit? If one neighbor complains, yeah, I can smell it, come here, oh yeah, we can smell it, wind's blowing in this direction. Is that enough to withdraw the permit? Or,
Or is it?
I mean, they scream one night at 3:00 in the morning and wake the whole neighborhood up, but they only do it once. Is that enough to withdraw the complaint, or is, I mean, what are we gonna be telling people when they call us to complain about it? And just on a personal note, I think people move to villages to not be around animals. But that's my own personal
That's it, like
opinion.
if one neighbor smells it and they call and complain,
Right.
and we tell the gates, alleviate it, and they do, so you good?
Or the neighbor keeps complaining,
Or the neighbor
whether
keeps
they smell it or
complaining.
not.
Yeah. And the gates aren't doing anything about it. Yeah.
That could be.
So when there is a complaint, like now, we literally have to go there and smell it. We can't just take the neighbor's
No,
word for it. The screaming in the middle of the night, that's on you.
Right.
But so that we have to verify that, and then we do have to give them time to mitigate the issue. If it's smell.
It's just not that easy to issue a permit and then to revoke a permit. And you're telling people, well, we can revoke it. Well, you can, but I've never seen one, or
Easier said than done.
very seldom.
Right. It's not like you're gonna go over there and keep it back.
And what are they gonna do?
Just so you know, you were asking about the public hearing from the other meeting. So there were 4 people who spoke all in favor for in their
Oh, okay.
public hearing. And yes, our website is wonderful, because you can look that up.
That's the first time I've heard that in a long
We've
time.
got a lot to think about.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to. Wasn't ready to go.
And I think that is one of the, just kind of one of the dangers, but one of the issues of public hearings. Sometimes, there's enough new information, kind of take it all in. And, people are eager for us to make a decision, but we're not always ready to move on it. Just 'cause we've got to kind of observe.
You're in the public hearing, teases out new questions. and-
That's good governance.
Yeah, I came in very open-minded about it.
It would help, for all of us. I've been there, but if, anybody wants to go to Stephen Wilson's and take a look, you really don't smell. It's not like you walk into a horse barn or a cow barn, you're like, oh, so I'm in a barn. You walk over there, it's really it's not noxious, but, it's probably helpful just to go over there for your own edification. Yeah, just take a look and see what it's all about. It helped me out.
And my concern is almost not as much the alpacas themselves as the neighbor's perception, right?
Well, that's their.
Well, what alleviates that, you force the neighbor to go over and take a thing too, but
No.
are they beholden to do that?
I think to Paul's point, I think it's up to the applicant to educate the neighbors. And get the neighbors support, just like we do with the Michelle Shelton chicken law, right? Get the neighbors support, the neighbors are all on board, then I can be on board with it,
We officially call it.
That's what I
Showing
call
them
it,
law.
yeah.
No.
This will, eventually it'll be this.
I'm gonna move that, I'm gonna move forward with that.
Steve was thinking alpaca law.
No, I'll go for the showing them law.
Well, most people don't have experience with alpacas. It's not something, you don't go out there with alpacas.
Especially if it's happening 12 miles.
Paul, you done? Anything else?
I'm all good.
Tony?
One thing I was thinking about that
recently received the road safety. And I know Kathy did a good explanation of the circle part of it, but I was thinking it might be interesting, unless it's already been done, to have an engineering study to say, what would it cost to put in a sidewalk all the way up to 28? And create a special tax district that says the Woodworth people pay as well as the people on the road. You've got a lot of houses kind of up there. I didn't know whether anybody had looked at it. The problem is at a time.
Well, we looked at it, and Matt Hay actually responded to it. And we talked about this for years. And Matt Hay, right, he said something about that they could not put it up where the sewage treatment plant was for some kind of safety reason. There was some reason.
But Ernie, there was a couple issues. One, yeah, it doesn't fit on that side. The other side's got a pond, and on top of that, there's a hill. So the village would be responsible for cleaning, if it could possibly fit there, the village would be responsible for keeping that sidewalk clear. And through our winters, to keep that de-iced, I think was another major concern on a hill. So you've got people walking on a sidewalk going downhill, and it's a pretty steep grade, that first 400 feet coming off of 28. There is numerous issues with putting a sidewalk in there.
This is one that comes up every few years.
That's kind of what I thought is that
We had the board, we had the people from Fairlawn too, there years ago that they wanted it as well. You know, it'd be nice to have it, but I think we always came to that same conclusion.
Yeah,
that it was a pretty good time.
a rope swing.
There we go. That was it.
Nobody's putting through the back of that development. You know, like the one on Maple and North has a sidewalk that comes out the back.
It's pretty steep behind that residence, that duplex at 28 and Mill. It's pretty steep behind there. It would, I mean, it's all marsh and wetlands back down in there. That would be tough to build anything.
DEC would have a say in that as well.
So anything else? Ernie? Okay.
I think this is probably something for Shane. I did get a call from a resident who was just expressing concern about the left turn lane off of, I don't know if it's, I guess it's by Dollar General there. So is that going into Buffalo Road, but I don't know if that's called Hamburg or if it's called Knox there, but when.
Yeah, it's Gray Street.
Okay, Gray Street, okay. So her concern was, she had talked to somebody who works in Erie County, and they were saying that the village declares some interest in changing or making some modifications to the times when you can turn left, like you may want to say, there's certain times like when.
Like in Buffalo and Delaware, there's no left turns from
During
7 to
certain
9,
hours, yeah.
3 to
And
5.
it's more her concern, really, probably doesn't have anything so much to do with any accidents there, because I'm assumption if there aren't, but more with pedestrians crossing. Actually, people are using the pocket park. Many more kids are doing the soccer field and other events that are happening at Knox Park, if people are coming out that way. So would it make sense to try to do something, does the board want to even consider maybe limiting hours, that sort of thing, or during farmer market hours? But then I guess the county, we've got the county road.
Well, it's a state, the state changed all that. So that was all in the big Main Street reconstruction, or that time frame of the circle being redone and that whole intersection being corrected. I don't know where you would put a sign that indicated a time frame for that, because it's such a wide intersection. You couldn't put it really where it would be very visible for people pulling into the left turn lane, unless it hung above the street.
Right.
So all the way across Buffalo, it's gonna be a pain in the butt to enforce, because there is traffic there and they are looking both ways, and to key in on, once you already pull into that left turn lane and then see a sign saying no left turn now, that would be difficult.
Even because it's across the road even.
Right, because you'd already be in the left turn lane at that point, and you're kind of hung out to dry at that point. It does get congested there. The main soccer season's over for Arsenal, so my idea in the evenings would be calmer now. I don't know. Yeah, I'll think about it and see if I can bring any more ideas back to you.
That is a tough one.
But we discussed that we discussed that just probably a year or two ago when that same concern was brought up. But again, the way they constructed that street so wide, it would be tough to narrow it down to 2 lanes again, without a major overhaul of the curbing and everything in that area. I don't believe there's any numerous accidents happening in that area.
Like bike accidents or pedestrian.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we might have had one, but not a major concern that's ringing any bells or anything at this point. We'll keep an eye out.
One set.
But, you know, I got is, we have a friends of Knox meeting this Wednesday. I mean, that's family. Friends of Hamlin, sorry, Friends of Hamlin meeting this Wednesday.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. We're meeting over at Hamlin Park, and, the group has, some ideas on, low impact use for the park that they'd like to throw out there. And, we'll get them up to date kind of on our grant application, some of the stuff our DPW is doing. So Terry and I will brief you guys once we have met with them and see what the takeaway is. That said, we have a quick executive session to discuss a legal matter. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I have one quick question before we do that. You brought up parks, the state park, Knox Park. How do we petition the state to maintain that, the wall especially that's deteriorating down Seneca Street? And I believe they're allowing the farmhouses to just dilapidate until they condemn them and tear them down, which would, in my opinion, would severely harm the aesthetic value and the nature of that farm. Food for thought. I don't really want to discuss it right now, but if anybody comes up with any ideas, who we get a hold of, how you do it, how we petition them, so we don't let that happen.
So I saw that wall. I remember my sister-in-law slid on some ice at Boeing into the wall and knocked a hole in it. And at the time, the Nazis owned it, and they said, hey, you know, it costs this much to repair it. She or her insurance paid for it, and they fixed it up. But you're right now, there's multiple holes going down the wall.
It's fun.
So
Trees growing into it.
I was,
And there are basins to do that. The area is really rare.
and I was in Geneseo, and they had an old wall like that. From the Wadsworth estate, and they fixed it up all along. And I've watched it slowly pick away as I go through, and it's all fully repaired and restored. And it was, yeah, I called and reached out to the Geneseo village government. They put me in contact with the group that set it up, and it was all privately done with a group that raised funds and did the work and hired people to do.
Is that a state? Wadsworth, is that a state?
No,
Oh, it's
private estate. Yeah, the private estate.
So are
Their
there,
wedding venue now.
so are there issues with us trying to do private or volunteer on state property?
Right? Then we could get you know what, I could reach out to the Friends of Knox Park
Yeah, that's right.
contact I have and see if they want to help get behind something like that. They could use the
I think
Geneseo folks.
It's gonna
that
take a
is
long
pretty
time.
experienced.
Even if we had a green light immediately, it's gonna take a decade.
It's still better than what it was.
No, I agree, but I think my point being is step it up now.
Yeah, the community would be behind something like that. I'll reach out to Friends of Knox.
Thank you.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's a mason about that wall. He said there's all sorts of things that's happening. It's actually, the wall is actually a couple feet lower because of the stone, the ice that gets blown up on there and the dirt, and then the frost heaves, and then there's a lot of reasons that wall is failing. It needs to be totally redone.
It does.
It doesn't have base,
Cover for it.
yeah, so he said there's, you know, when they just put it glued back together, it's just a temporary fix. It's all gonna come apart again.
And then
made a motion to go into executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. Further discussion? We don't intend to vote on anything after we come out. We're discussing legal matter. All right, if you don't come back, thank you for coming.